I have forgotten how amazingly messy, imperfect, and wonderful it is to be doing worship outside. There's always someone coming in to tell you something isn't in place and something isn't there. And I also need you to know that this team made the decision to move this service outside and accomplish this transition in just under a week. So can we thank them one more time? And that's our tech team and our worship team. I want to also remind you, you have a chance to put a word in our Mentimeter, because we're going to we hope we'll see that at the end. I spent some of my risk dollars this week, and I rode on BART for the first time in over 2 years, because really it's been driving my little ecological soul crazy to be driving everywhere all the time. And then I went to the theater, because I know it's really important to support the arts. I went to ACT to see what they had picked for their first show back after 2 years of pandemic. It was Freestyle Love Supreme, which is an entirely improvisational show performed by a New York-based hip-hop group. And I thought, as I sat there in the opening lines, of course, the first show back has to be improvisational, because that's what we're always doing all the time, she says, as pages of scripts fly around. Me, who barely made it after this week of unexpected loss, after the efforts to reopen a week early, me and my fourth of 6 weeks without running water in my house because of supply chain issues. Of course, it's all about improvisation and random stuff, like 2022 seems to be itself. Now, the actors rapped about truths about their lives and then they combined them with random phrases that were supplied by the audience. Very random, like wet cat food, and twins locked in the car, and protest, and Cheetos. So it was the same, and it was different, and people laughed just as hard with their masks on, and it felt real and surreal at the same time. It felt firm and tentative. It felt joyful, and also was tinged with a little bit of that sorrow, that kintsugi gold of grief that's always with us now. For so many of us, life seems still like a big improvisation. How do you navigate a family member's birthday, or in a COVID precautions world, or a celebration of life, or nuptials, or a first date? Do you ask for proof of booster before or after the date? Winter nights, giving someone a ride to church. All of this has to be improvised. All of this. In a climate that is still often chilling, Birds Aren't Real is a parody. It's a Gen Z parody, and it's also a warning that our nation is being overtaken by forces which are as anti-rational as they are hate-filled. Denying COVID or pretending that you didn't lose an election makes no sense when you think about it, and all of this just interrupts our need to be together. Perhaps ostriches, rather than eagles, may rapidly becoming the most apt bird for our national symbol. Economist Robert Reich has pointed out that the level of unhappiness about our public life in this nation has just continued to drop and drop and drop and drop. And yet, our satisfaction with our individual lives has been rising at the same time. And I don't have to list the reasons that we're unhappy in our shared life. We've got too many of them for me to do at this point in the service. And yet, Reich points out that people actually have found some things they like working from home, or buying less stuff, or being more selective about who we spend time with, and deepening relationships. And then he points out that once again, this is only for a privileged class who can do that. And once again, it has increased our intergenerational wealth gap. And yet there are things that have changed that we actually enjoy. Many people we know are leaving the Bay Area, where the gap between the haves and the have-nots is widening into something like the Grand Canyon. I remember as a child seeing pictures of the Dust Bowl era and wondering what it was like to have that many people around who were without a house or a home. And now it's not uncommon for those among us on a Sunday morning to not have that basic right of shelter. Amid all of this, we have the opportunity to ask ourselves, what is community, and what do we want it to be? What can it be? What can we make it? What is a community such as this, which is the bearer of memory, the memory of beliefs which have saved hearts and minds over generations, the protector of ideas that all lives have worth and need respect at a time when hatred and division are endemic, protectors of the idea of truth in a world where everybody now claims that word, of the knowledge of interdependence at a time when many are running for the lifeboats, shoving others out of the way without realizing that they need the oars and the energy of other rowers on the deck, and they just left them in their frenzy for self-preservation. We need to be that community that remembers that. Participating in this community may be as important as what Adrienne Marie Brown calls a fractal, which is how the greater whole is reflected in a little piece, a smaller piece. Here we will continue to practice discernment about truth, even as we come to understand how much we don't understand. We will wrestle what it means to be strong and accountable to one another, and also what it means to realize joy and pleasure, even when we don't know the outcomes, and we understand that now. In our congregational community, much has also changed, and not just the faces, the additions of new wise ones. Most people aren't thrilled anymore about traveling on weeknights for administrative meetings, especially because many people haven't done what I've done and spent their risk dollars on BART. Traffic is awful. Attendance at church at home a few times a month is now something people are used to. And many have told me that's what they plan to continue to do. Many rely on our virtual programming because of their health. So how will we as a community keep finding new ways to meet? How will we support those that are willing to face truth even when it's hard, and especially those who face it more when they look at the course of their life, our youth and young adults? We need to laugh, and we need to ask a lot of questions as we reemerge into actual community. Cameron Caskey, who's 21, is an activist from Florida who helped organize the March for Our Lives student protest against gun violence in 2018, is now involved in the Birds Aren't Real movement. He says the parody makes you stop for a second and laugh. In a uniquely bleak time to come of age, Cameron says, it doesn't hurt to have something to laugh about together. We too need to laugh, and we need to ask a lot of questions as we reemerge into actual community. Will most people go back to riding BART? Will we ever use reusable water bottles again? How can we protect our democracy against what is a clear continued threat? How can our grief make our joy more brilliant? And there are questions we just here in our fractal community of MDUUC have to also ask, and we'll begin asking them in our congregational forum next Sunday. How can we strengthen our bonds even if some of us will have to remain virtual for the foreseeable future? How can we experience joy and pleasure and keep building our resilience for the next wave of what is to come? How can we offer sanctuary to those who will continue to wear masks in public, who may need to stay virtual for a very long time? How can we be generous to those among us who do not have the basics of food or water or shelter? Movement theorist Adrienne Marie Brown speaks of this as a time in which we have to move from being able to name issues articulately and identify them to actually moving into the long and committed work of transformational justice, where we sit with the evolution and the messiness and the imperfections and dismantle borders and boundaries and start to look at the moral underpinnings of our very economy. Author and futurist Meg Wheatley says, when we give up our addiction to a certain kind of empty hope, we can focus on what we do as a deep engagement with what is meaningful and nourishing. She says, we have been experiencing over the last decade or so the cyclical end of a civilization, and she cautions us not to be casual about building our islands of sanity because the next wave of cyclical change is still to come. But here's the good news. Birds are real. I hear one now. And people are real, and love is real when it is that deep commitment. And we are coming back and reemerging, and it won't be the same. It will be the same, and it won't be the same. It will be different, and it won't be different. Some of those we love are not with us, taken by death and also by the economics of this region. And it feels the same, and it feels different. But here is what I know about this community, where we have our own version of freestyle love supreme, and in which I will continue to use my active hope to build. It can always be a place where we are engaged and enlivened, appreciative of the joy that grief etches with greater potency, guardians of truths both known and unknown, relational, embodied, flexible, and ever living into a deeper love.